Okay, that wasn't a minute. Already 10:30. Okay, just to sound check again, everybody can hear, right? Siping and Mages, you can hear me well. Okay, got it. All right, I guess we will start. Welcome everybody to marikitaYELL episode 1, Plastics Endgame. The Global Plastics Treaty actually is a proposed legally binding international agreement being negotiated by the UN to address the entire life cycle of plastic pollution. And in August, earlier this month, 5th to the 15th of August, the final round of negotiations in Geneva concluded without reaching consensus on a final text. So, in today's episode, we sit down with two leading voices who also attended the negotiations. First, I want to introduce Ms. Wong Peng, Events and Project Officer, Center to Combat Corruption and Cronyism, C4 Center, and Ms. Mageswari Sangaralingam, Chief Executive of the Consumers Association of Penang and Honorary Secretary of the Sahabat Alam Malaysia. So, welcome to both of you. And so I wanted to start with the first question to both of you, asking you to introduce yourself and your role at your organization, and maybe share a bit about what led you to engage with the plastics crisis.
Shall I let Magis go first, or
I
start?
think
Okay.
You go ahead.
yes, you can start first. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I got involved in this because just a little bit background about C4 Center first. So C4 Center actually started almost 10 years ago, and primarily our focus was actually we are a non-profit organization that focuses on institutional reforms through policy and legislation to improve governance in the country. So we look into a lot of legal and policy issues. So we got involved into plastic waste specifically and waste trade because we started in 2018, starting with our first report looking into the waste that are actually flowing into the country from developed countries. Why is it legal? And Malaysia is actually party to Basel Convention, which is actually another international convention that governs the transboundary movement of hazardous waste. So that got us researching into those provisions. And then later on, we got to know in 2022, that there is this new mandate given from UNEA to start negotiating an international legally binding instrument called the Global Plastic Treaty, in short, which will then give us opportunity to really control a lot more besides just the transboundary movement of hazardous waste that Basel Convention currently controls. So that's how our organization started monitoring the development of this particular instrument.
Right. Thanks, Peng, for that. And then Mages?
Yeah. All right. I joined the Consumer Association Penang in early 1990s. So during that time itself, the Consumer Association of well known as CAP, they had already been working on plastics, and we had come up with a small booklet titled Toxics in Plastics, where we had already included in terms of the chemicals in plastics, what are the dangers, impacts. And then so we had started working on this for many years, and also working at the state level, the Penang government, and also one of the local councils was actually in the 90s itself was planning to ban single-use plastic bags, in Penang. But at that time itself, there was already some frictions. The Ministry of International Trade at that time was not happy, because they were saying this, a ban, even in a small local council in Penang, will have an impact on the industries. So they stopped that. But then we didn't stop at that. So we continued working with international groups like International Pollutants Elimination Network and Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives on the issue of plastics and also waste incineration and chemicals. So we had keep on conducting tests, sending plastic platelets for testing to independent labs, whether locally or overseas. And so we had a lot of publications also on this issue. And so before the UNEA resolution, so we had also written to the Malaysian government regarding this issue, that Malaysia should take part in the UNEA and also support the formation of a treaty or whatever it is, for the resolution to be passed. And so since we had been very active, the Malaysian government also included us as part of the National Negotiating Committee from the beginning itself. Since we have been active, we have been writing letters to the government, and we've been doing a lot of advocacy efforts. In terms of waste trade itself, we also, as I mentioned earlier, we are a member of the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, or in short, we call it Gaia. We were also conducting research itself, even before China closed its doors to its plastic waste imports. So we had done papers, and then also advocacy efforts during the Basel Convention to stop developed countries to dump plastic waste into Malaysia and also other developing countries. So we were also part of the, what you can say, quite an ambitious work that we had started, and it was successful in getting the plastic waste amendments into the Basel Convention. So we were part of a larger coalition, and we kept pushing for the plastics treaty and also better controls on waste trade.
Oh, I'll just, so Jean, sorry, I'll just want to add on to that, of course, yes, it's actually true. A lot of work that we do, we got to know of Sabah Alam Malaysia as well as CAP because of their long work in this, because we only started in 2018, and then moving on to 2022. So obviously our path crossed, and we leverage a lot of knowledge and expertise from all the other parties as well. And C4 Center is also a core member of the Global Alliance on Incinerator Alternatives, as well as Break Free from Plastic. And that's where we also have more expertise to leverage on in terms of the areas of plastic and waste trade and so on.
At national level, we also, had a meeting, and then we decided to start a coalition called the Malaysian Stop Waste Trade Coalition, where we have several active NGOs as part of the coalition. And first we were working on the waste trade, but now we have moved on to the sticks treaty issue.
So in all, both of you combined have worked many years on the plastics issues. And suppose someone who doesn't have a background in the plastics treaty or international law, how would you explain it to them? And why is it important for Malaysia to be involved in the negotiations?
I have a presentation on that, so you can. So what we normally ask people when we are having a presentation, we will ask, what is plastics? What is plastics made from? So I'm sure most of you are muted here and you may not be able to answer. So some of them will be thinking, okay, what it is made of, and then they'll still come up with, oh, okay, oil and gas. Yeah, actually, it's true. So plastic is actually carbon and chemicals. Yeah, you cannot just have oil and then you come up with plastics. So you need to add chemicals into it. You can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned here, plastics don't exist without chemicals. So you need to add on many chemicals into this, extracted oil to make sure, there are so many types of plastics. There are hard plastics, soft plastics, the color. So you need to add additives. Yeah. So, and these chemicals are released at all phases of the plastics life cycle. Yeah. So when you're extracting oil, when you're producing the plastics, during transport, it's due to our, use of fossil fuel. During use, also there is chemical leachate from the plastics that we are using, and also disposal. So what research has found was there are over 16,000 chemicals found in plastics. I'm not saying it's like one plastic product, but so many types of plastics. So over 16,000 chemicals are being used, and with 4,200 chemicals which have been identified as toxic. Yeah. And for the rest of the chemicals, there's no data or hazard data on those plastic chemicals. So there's a lot of literature on this, scientific evidence, and also research done. You can check out the IPEN, International Pollutants Elimination Network website to learn more about plastics and the toxic chemicals. Yeah, also specific chemicals which is very hazardous and which actually we are also consuming. Yeah, when we are having our food and drinks, or the air that we breathe. Okay, next. So, so during the production, during the extraction of it, we also contribute, plastic production contributes over 5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. This has also been researched. You can get further reading from the Center for International Environmental Law, which is also a very active organization involved in calling for the Global Plastics Treaty. Yeah? And this is also an energy intensive process. And one thing that we would like to inform you is about microplastics. Yeah. So microplastic is not just only the plastic pellets. It's microplastics is everywhere. It's in our air. It's in the food that we eat, and it is also in us. Yeah. There's already a lot of research that shows that microplastics are in us. Yeah. So these microplastics also harms wildlife, not only human health, wildlife, and also goes into the ecosystems and harms our wildlife, and also what is the result? It is biodiversity loss is the result. Next. So as I mentioned, plastics fuel the climate crisis. When you talk about plastics and also waste management, there's also waste incineration, yeah, which is involved in this whole matrix of plastic production, use, and disposal. Yeah, so you can see there is this graph, and the image there, which shows how much of greenhouse gas is emitted. So greenhouse gas emissions is like 20% of when we are extracting fossil fuels, 16% when we are the cracking plants, and then where you are producing the hydrocarbon, and then also 13% when the other chemicals are being produced, 26% when monomers are produced. Yeah, so all these plastic monomers, you have to polymerize them, then only it becomes plastics. So 75% of greenhouse gas emissions from plastic production happens before the polymerization stage. Yeah, so and then during the product shipping, that's a different. But what we can see later on that we will explain, when we're talking about the life cycle of plastics in the plastics treaty itself, some of the countries are saying, no, plastic should start from polymerization. Plastic should start from product design. They are not talking about the extraction, when actually it already starts. Yeah, 75% of the emissions already started before the prime plastic is produced. Okay, so that's why we need to look into the whole life cycle of plastics when we are tackling the issue of plastic pollution. Next. So you would have heard about triple planetary crisis. So as I had mentioned about the climate impacts, yeah, due to greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, and pollution. There's pollution that is very visible, yeah, from the litter, from the marine pollution, yeah, marine debris, plastic in the marine debris, and also all this microplastics. Yeah, the picture that I've shown there, it's like microbeads and microplastics, which you can see. But there's also tiny microplastics and nanoplastics that is invisible, yeah, that we don't see. People don't think that is pollution, part of the plastic pollution. Next. So how are we exposed to plastic pollution? Throughout the whole process, we are already exposed. If you want to get more information, we are also C4 Center and SAM and CAP are also core members of Break Free from Plastic. They've got a lot of information and resource materials. So for you to check it out, you can just go to their website and check out all those toolkits and information. Yeah, even during consumption doesn't mean you're eating, yeah, but when you are using the plastic product, you're also exposed to the chemicals that is in the plastic product, and this actually endangers our health, yeah, due to hormone disruption, and also there is also research that shows it also contributes to diabetes, yeah, it's endocrine disrupting chemicals. So a lot of exposure to it. Next. And when we're talking about recycling, people say, okay, all right, we have the plastic waste, we can recycle them. Yeah, but for your information, not all plastics have been recycled. Yeah, since 1950s when plastic was introduced till now, research shows that only about 10% of the plastics has been recycled. Yeah, and not all types of plastic have been recycled. Yeah, in Malaysia, the most common plastics that are recycled are resin type 1, 2, and 5. This is PET, PE, and also the HDPEs. Yeah, and so only certain types of plastics are generally recycled in Malaysia and also other countries. Yeah, so what happens to the rest of them? It is being dumped. And as I had mentioned earlier, there is chemicals in those plastics. So when you are recycling the plastic, the chemicals don't disappear. It actually gets into the new product that is being produced from the recycled plastic pellets. Yeah, that is, and also new, and research had shown that new chemicals are also being generated, when you are recycling. So it is actually very toxic. Yeah, what we are saying, toxics in, toxics out. Yeah, and the more plastics you produce, there's more pollution. Okay, next. So what is the impacts of plastic wastage? I will just touch slightly. Yeah? So the picture that which is there is in Jenjarum, that was taken in 2019. Yeah? In 2018, Malaysia became the top destination for plastic waste because China says we are not taking this waste from other countries anymore. Yeah. So besides plastic waste, they had 24 types of waste that they said we are not going to accept this. So what happened was Malaysia became the top destination, and also some of the other Southeast Asian developing countries were the top destination for this plastic waste. What happened? At that time, the plastics that were coming in were not clean, yeah, they were not homogeneous, and not all of them could be recycled. And so most of it were dumped. Yeah, of course, the recycling plant will only take what they can recycle. Yeah, and they don't care, so they just dump it. And when it is too much of waste, they intentionally burn it. So you can see some of the waste that is burned. So the communities who were staying nearby were getting sick. They complained, and then at first there was another ministry. They didn't bother about the community complaints, but then later on, the Minister of Environment at that time was Yeo Bee Yin. She took action, raided the illegal plants, and what they found also, and even the community found those illegal recycling plants were set up by businessmen from China. Yeah, so they just set up very crude recycling plants, very crude waste disposal management methods. Yeah, it polluted. So all this waste polluted our soil, our water, our air. It threatened public health and also the workers' health and safety. And for your information, the workers were mostly migrant workers, so we were very concerned about their health also. Yeah, there were no safety measures taken. Yeah, and also now they're saying, okay, we can, even if you clamp down on the illegal recycling plants, but even the the recycling plants which are operating legally also will produce microplastics. Research has been done by our lecturers in UPM, so researchers, and they also found microplastics in the air and also in the water bodies. Yeah. So a lot of research has been done. For you to learn more, you can just check it out. And also what happens? Okay, you can see the waste there. Who pays for the cleanup? Yeah, even if you say, oh, the government is going to pay for the cleanup, but whose money is it? It's the taxpayers' money. Why should we be cleaning up waste, which is imported? Yeah, and of course, the government doesn't know who actually is responsible in importing and who should, take accountability towards this waste for the cleanup cost. So it's a really major issue that we have all been advocating and lobbying the government. And right now they have more stricter controls on the waste that is being imported. Next. So these are also some of the research that was done by Greenpeace. And there was also another matter when we are transporting waste, the pellets, plastic pellets, anything can happen. So this was an oil spill. Not we are saying oil spill, the ship sunk at the coast of Sri Lanka, and they had a major environmental problem. And recently, the courts in Sri Lanka had decided that the company is responsible and they will have to pay billions to the Sri Lankan government for the cleanup costs. Yeah. Next. So I think I'm going to end soon. So the projected plastic production, it is going to be quadrupling if we don't do anything. right now. So if you are looking into business as usual, you can see in the graphic that was produced by Gaia, we will be drowning in plastic. Yeah. But if we take measures to redesign, reuse, it will let and also reduce plastic production, we can at least control what's happening. If not, we will really be drowning in waste. Okay, next. So that is why we have been calling for the Global Plastics Treaty, because this is a global issue which needs global controls. So this is the timeline that was projected before the INC 5.2 in Geneva. Supposed to have a diplomatic conference. We're supposed to end the conclusion, final round of negotiations in Geneva, which was happened just a few weeks ago, but it wasn't concluded. Later on, Peng and I will also explain what had happened there. Okay, next. So what our key asks for the Meaningful Plastics Treaty, we need global control measures. Yeah. And as I'm supposed to respond to your question about what Malaysia wants, it's not only Malaysia, it's the whole world. Yeah. What we want is we need to have global control measures because it is a global issue. You can see marine litter. Yeah. The sea is wide, the oceans are wide. Yeah. We are not only having our own waste in near our seashores, it's also waste from other countries. Yeah. And so we need more measures at the global level. And Malaysia keeps saying, no, we can just have our national commitments, national rules. It doesn't work. We are also importing a lot of plastic products, yeah, or products that contain plastics. So you need to have control measures at the global level, yeah, in terms of the trade, in terms of the waste trade and all. First of all, also we need to reduce producing plastics. Some of the countries are saying, no, we cannot reduce. So we are saying, what is unnecessary plastics? What are the hazardous plastics? What are the avoidable plastics? At least prioritize this first. And so we need to reduce that. In terms of plastic packaging and single-use plastic, they find that 15 to 20% are this, which can actually be, eliminated. Yeah, and also we need to regulate chemical groups because there are a lot of hazardous chemicals that are being used. Yeah, and throughout their life cycle, not only in the plastic product. And you need to have sufficient funding and apply polluter pays principle so that it's not just any funding. The people, the countries and the companies which are producing more plastics should be paying more because they are actually polluters. So that is the polluter pays principle. And also we need to have monitoring and reporting to track the progress. And we are also calling for just transition because when you stop production of plastics and when there's also a lot of people who are involved here in the whole life cycle of plastics, they should have just transition in terms of livelihoods and also other issues and also a lot of other things that we will touch on later. Thank you. Maybe I spoke too much already. Thanks.
No worries. Thanks, Mages, for giving us sort of a rundown about, a bit about what plastics are. I think when we look at plastics, we look at it at the end of its life cycle, right? Because it's in a form that we can see. It's unhygienic, so it tends to be that. But I think you brought to attention the life cycle from when it's going to be produced. What are the inputs and the outputs from there? And I think we need to talk more about also the production of plastics, right? And how it's also creating pollution and chemical waste being dumped or not disposed of properly, and also the health implications as well. So I know you have covered also, a list of, Malaysia's key asks, but I wanted to ask maybe Siping to, if you can break it down a little bit for us on the key Malaysian asks at the plastics treaties, and how would this actually benefit the local environment, economy, and our communities?
Thank you, Sujin. Yeah, and thanks to Mages for giving a background on the plastic treaty. So I will also share my slides. I hope it works this time. Are you seeing the full slides or still my presenter view?
Yeah.
Full slides, yeah?
Slides.
Okay, all right. So I will actually touch a little bit about the Global Plastic Treaty and Malaysia's participation in this particular treaty negotiation. So just as what Mages has given a quick background. So the plastic treaty can only be negotiated by member states. So you need to be a country in the United Nations, in UN, to negotiate what goes into the treaty text, which articles and so on. So how we as civil society are able to participate is actually just as observers. So we are able to then observe the negotiation, lending the air of transparency into making sure that the treaty takes shape and the wordings and the areas that they cover, the treaty text will cover, is actually really sufficient to protect and fulfill the ask that Mages have listed just now. So during the recent 5.2 INC in Geneva, Malaysia actually submitted written submission only one piece, okay? So the term contact group there is actually to divide the entire treaty. So the treaty in total had about 32 articles. So to ensure that the member states are able to negotiate it part by part, the organization of work by the Secretariat is that they divide it into certain contact groups. So contact group 1 covered areas specific to production, which what Mages mentioned earlier on, talks about the upstream area from extraction of the oil and so on, And this was Malaysia's written submission in contact group 1. Under Article 6 for sustainable production, no tax. And there was also plenary session which are broadcast live, where everyone could actually see. Malaysia made an oral intervention as well. So member states are allowed to also do oral besides written submission to, propose what goes into the text and so on. So oral intervention was given on day 9 on the 13th of August, which is one day before the end of INC 5.2 in Geneva. So you all could actually listen as well as to what was Malaysia's intervention on the 13th of August. Can we have the video, please?
Thank you, Micronesia. Now I give the floor to Malaysia, followed by France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Malaysia extend our appreciation to you, Chair, and your team for the hard work that went into producing the new draft text proposal. We commend your attempt to bring the proposal between member states. Nonetheless, we share the same concerns raised by other delegations of the non-inclusivity and imbalanced proposition in the text. For example, the scope defining the parameters of this instrument is still missing. This will leave us to proceed blindly, unaware or unable to fully grasp the extent of the implication this instrument will brought upon us. Nonetheless, we are open to explore how the regional consultation you propose could move us forward out of this impasse. We align with the statement made by the distinguished delegate of Kuwait, speaking on behalf of the allied countries, and with the statement of the delegation of Iran, Qatar, and many others. Our delegation takes this opportunity to express our agreement on the urgent need to tackle plastic pollution, both globally and nationally. However, we need an honest environmental treaty for this effort. Hence, we call for a treaty that is balanced, practical and implementable, and must not inadvertently undermine sustainable development goals, especially for developing countries. Thank you, Chair.
I thank you, Malaysia.
Thank you very much. So I will continue with my slides. Is this the one? Is that correct? Jill?
That is correct.
All right. So I think there was some audio problem, but basically you could hear that at the end of the oral intervention, it is very rightly put that Malaysia is a developing country. So obviously, economic interest is of great concern. when we come into a negotiation of a new globally binding instrument that will control production, right? So that's why you will see that written text-wise, we have also submitted that there should not be any controls on production, because obviously Malaysia is an oil and gas producing country. But then comes to mind that two areas, I mean, one very glaring thing that came across to me was that the delegation that went for the negotiation of the treaty representing Malaysia is headed by the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environmental and Sustainability, NRES, our so-called Environment Ministry. But the focus that they brought to the negotiation was a lot focused on defending Malaysia's economic interests. So is it really whatever we have asked for, right, which is no caps on production, does it make sense? For one, we know that we are expanding our petrochemical facilities. The Pengerang Integrated Complex in Johor has investment from Saudi Aramco, and this is in the news already reported that it will be the largest oil and gas production hub in Southeast Asia. But at the same time, Petronas chemical shares are actually being downgraded. So these are actually done by stock analysts, and they are actually downgrading because production capacity is currently over what that is required. Instead, facilities that are actually reducing their production capacity are actually being rated better in terms of stock value, such as Lotte Chemicals, who has actually in December last year shut down one of their facility in terms of producing pellets and polymers. So in terms of facilities that we have in Malaysia and globally, there is currently a global over capacity. The kind of like blue line you see there is actually what the capacity is globally in terms of production of polymers for plastics. It is running at about close to 80%, so above 75%. But if you look at the green line, which is Northeast Asia, is actually most likely covering countries like China and so on. They are running close to that capacity, like 70 plus and so on, you know. But the rest of the world, you can see that their capacity, everyone is trying to reduce because there is an oversupply. They are no longer profitable. These facilities are shutting down. In fact, ExxonMobil and SABIC, which are two huge oil and gas facilities, have already shut down in France and Netherlands, indicating that there is actually really overcapacity. And there is actually no plans for the next 30 years in Europe to actually have integrated upstream refinery facilities. So the refinery facilities are the ones that Mages explained earlier on. When you extract the oil, it needs to be processed and refined before it can become polymers and so on. So there is actually no plans in Europe to build any more for the next 30 years. But in Malaysia, what do we see? We are expanding. So there's actually a lot of trade impacts when there's an overcapacity in terms of chemicals and polymers, such as ethylene, PET, and so on, okay? And there's also a trend that a lot more crude oil that is being extracted now from oil and gas countries, the petro states, they are actually needing to find new markets for their oil that they extract because of the electrification, right? A lot of people are now moving to EVs and the need for data centers and so on, moving a lot more to that area. Therefore, there's less demand for transport fuel. So they need to find a new market for all that oil that they are continue to extract. And what happens to all this oversupply and overmaking of all these polymers and pellets and resin? There's an oversupply, and we end up being dumped on by the countries that are producing more, like China and so on. So even Malaysia, our Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, MITI, in May 2025, just recently, had to impose higher duties so that it can prevent those countries from dumping their excess PET pellets and so on onto Malaysia, impacting our own local Malaysia plastic industry. So how are we actually then making sure that one of the ask that Mages mentioned about just transition, all that plastic and petrochemical, oil and gas and plastic industry workers are now properly prepared for just transition when the market is so oversupplied already. Instead, we are still building more. So the ICIS, which is an independent commodity investigative research center, have actually done a study, and they know that we need to actually cut down 20 million tons in terms of capacity from the global market before we can even then hit about 85% and show some sort of profitability back for this particular industry. So actually, global analysts and researchers have already mentioned that we need to reduce. We need to reduce the amount of plastic there is globally in the market. So are we really defending Malaysia's economic interests on the hindsight, then not getting our plastic industry prepared for just transition by just continuously saying that, no, we do not want to cap production? Is that the right move? I do not know. I do not have the answer, but I hope the government will pay attention. Over in the EU, the chemical companies are already moving to new innovation. They are actually doing more research and innovating, coming up with low carbon intensity chemical production methods where it no longer emits so much greenhouse gases, maybe using different chemicals, safer chemicals and so on, low carbon intensity ones. And they are also encouraging all the petchem industry to move towards focusing on processing local plastics, or making local plastics, making it circular, and then coping with smaller facilities. So this is actually a study that's done, and the source I've given in the link as well. So we really need to think about whether defending economic interests, is it at the price of not getting our plastic industry prepared for a just transition? Because they need to be prepared. We have a huge plastic and oil and gas industry. Then we wanted to touch on then businesses. So once those polymers are produced, right, there are actually two different, when we talk about plastic industries, we are not only talking about the oil and gas and polymer producers. There are also then the businesses in terms of the customers, the clients who actually buy the pellets, or manufacturers that take the raw resin and pellets and make it into plastic products. It could be packaging, it could be the toy, it could be anything that's made. So that's the other business section that we're talking about. These are either brand owners who actually make plastic products, toys and so on, or manufacturers that are the ones that are being commissioned by the brand owners to make it. So Malaysia actually has plastic manufacturers and plastic recyclers. So those businesses have recently formed a coalition. Over more than 280 plus global companies has formed a coalition asking for stronger provisions in the global plastic treaties. These are companies like Coca-Cola, Unilever, Starbucks, Decathlon. These are all global brands that will not only sell in one country, but they sell everywhere, right? So they are asking, and they have actually taken their own initiative to look at, do an economic impact study in a few countries like Brazil, China, Japan, Indonesia, South Africa. These are, some of them are developing economies, some developed, okay? So they did the economic studies, and these were the findings, that it requires global harmonized criteria and phase out of problematic plastic products. These are the ones that Mages mentioned and earlier on that are unnecessary, single use, that has no purpose, right? So if there are global criteria, because these are global brands, they sell everywhere. If there is global criteria to phase them out, they will be able to eliminate more than twice versus just each country doing their own national country measures. So if each country just want to do one bit here and there, say that, oh, we can control this by ourselves within our own country laws, it'll be very difficult for global brands to move, right? So the study has proven that, it will be able to eliminate more than twice the volume of problematic plastics. A second finding from the study was that they can reduce global mismanaged plastic waste by 23%. So like what Magesh also mentioned, a lot of this plastic are transboundary in movement, especially when global brands, they are made from some other country being imported to Malaysia. Well, with the burst of the Lazada, the Shopee, and the, I don't know what else, Taobao, or I don't know, I don't do online shopping. So the people buy things everywhere and it comes from everywhere, right? So it requires global criteria. That's why the plastic treaty is really needed by Malaysia.
Right.
And then if you increase reusability and recyclability, all these brands will then be able to innovate better packaging, better systems to make sure that their product can go back in a circular economy. The bottle that you use for your Coke, will find, they will then come up with innovation to have some system to take it back, wash it and refill it and so on. Therefore,
Thank you.
protecting jobs. Oh, sorry, am I out of time?
No, I just wanted to get into, because you're also talking a lot about, touch upon what work has been done by other countries, also our end, imposing higher duties, other countries closing down integrated oil and gas complexes, and then they are also looking into low carbon intensity chemicals, into producing plastics, safer chemicals, and then making it more circular, so on and so forth. So with all these, case studies already that are already available in other parts of the world, to both yourself and Mages, what do you see as part of the gaps and limitations still in the global plastic treaties? And then what are some of the new opportunities? We have here with us in the participants a lot of young people with us, and I think that the question is, what are the opportunities for them, irrespective of which field or industry they come from?
Should I stop sharing my slides, or do I want to take that question first?
Do you have some more slides to go?
Yes. So these are actually basically the national policies that we have so far, right? Malaysia has a few roadmaps already that were kicked off in 2021 or 2018, roadmap towards zero single-use plastics, Malaysia Plastic Sustainability Roadmap, and there's also the Marine Litter Policy Action Plan. So these all have been around for at least 3 to 4 years already. But as of April 2025, we have only been able to issue one ban nationally, which is, and it's not even across all countries, it's actually just across all states. It's just single-use plastic bag, the flimsy pink color plastic bag. That's the only thing that's been banned. And where has it been banned? Only in forest reserve, national parks, marine parks, geosites, and so on. Not even everywhere. So all these are national measures. Do you think it's enough?
I think if we take a simple vote here, my guess is everybody say it's not enough.
Yeah,
But
and meanwhile, our generation of solid waste grows on every year, and we are currently generating, predicted to generate over 15 million tons of waste, out of which 22% is plastics. Right, landfills are going to be full by 2041. But you see the number here, next number highest is actually after plastic is paper. So I want to ask audiences, this cup here that you see a lot in your takeaway coffee. Is this really just paper? So there are actually a lot of hidden plastics that are not known. So it's classified as paper, but if you try pouring a hot drink into a pure paper cup, do you think it will hold? It will melt away. There is a layer of plastic in this. All right, so that's what we meant by hidden plastics. So this 15% of paper is also ridden with plastics inside. Packaging. Nice packaging for, okay, you can cover the brand. I don't intend to, dispel any brand here. This packaging here, paper, but it has a plastic window. So those are also plastics. So, when you look at the share of plastic waste, think about your footprint, to your young audience that are actually listening now onto the program. So you might want to consider, you have actually power in terms of deciding whether you want to get that cup or bring your own cup, and then therefore cutting down the pressure on our landfills. Yeah. So I'll stop sharing. I do have a few more slides, but do you allow me to go on, or you want to ask your next question?
Maybe we can go on to the next few questions first, because we also have some questions from the participants.
Sure.
Yeah, if that is okay. Okay. Yeah. So I think this will be maybe just one more question from me, and then I will, ask questions that participants have submitted to us before attending today's session. And I wanted to follow up on what you mentioned earlier, Peng, about some of the work that has already been done by by other countries actually, and what do you see as the gaps and limitations in the current global plastics treaty, in both your opinion, Peng and Mages as well. And then, of course, you can talk about, what opportunities are there for young people who are, working in their field, irrespective of what field they are in, right? Yeah. Who wants to go?
Possibly, I'll just touch a few points in terms of the gaps and limitations. So we have had 6 consultations, and the process has been like the member states negotiating. What we have found, it's not working. Yeah. So some of the member states are saying it's the process. Actually, the negotiations are going on, but it's the process, and also whatever that is being negotiated, they want a consensus. And so even if it's one country which says, no, I don't agree, there won't be consensus and they cannot move forward. Yeah. So this has actually been also blocking what's happening at the negotiation, and that's why we cannot come up with a proper treaty text. Yeah, a lot of blocking. So the countries are calling for the UNEP and also the INC chair to fix the process. Yeah, we need to have process. If it still can't be fixed, what they have been calling for is get out from this whole this process and come up with their own negotiation. Yeah, so there are a few member states which have higher ambition compared to what's happening at the current treaty negotiations. Yeah, where we can also see fossil fuel country and plastic manufacturers are also part of the team that is blocking. Yeah, including the petrol states. Petrol states, you think you all know, and I think that you know who are the petrol states. Yeah, including this is the Saudi Arabia, a lot of others countries that produce petroleum, including Malaysia, and you also have the US, the Russia. So these are the petrol states. So we can take the treaty out of that, and then also otherwise we should have the voting system. So this has also been proposed, but these countries are not agreeable to the voting, whether it's 3/4, a 3/4 majority vote, or also the 2/3 majority. So the process is not working, so we need to fix the process. Yeah, as what young people can do, you can also help in advocating this, but in terms of your career also, yeah, we know that plastics is actually quite harmful. Yeah, plastics is harmful. What is the alternative to plastics? Alternatives is not bioplastics. Yeah, it has to do with redesigning the whole system. So you can also look into reuse systems. Yeah, or also you would have seen a lot of zero waste stores where you don't need packaging. Yeah, why we are calling out on packaging is because even in Malaysia, packaging makes up 45% of the plastic market in Malaysia. Yeah, and 28% of it is also used in the electrical and electronics industry. So this again is the hidden plastic. Yeah, it's in your electronics. It's also in your textile. Yeah, a lot of our clothes are made from plastics. Yeah, so you need to look into what are the alternatives to plastics, so that some of these things can be done. So probably Peng, you have also a few things to comment on.
So actually what Magesh mentioned actually is the alternative pathways to actually finalize this treaty. So member states have been negotiating under the UNEP process, the United Nations Environmental Program that runs the Secretariat for the INC. And following 6 negotiations already and still unable to come to an agreement. So there are actually alternative, which is taking it outside, which what Magesh mentioned. I also want to highlight about young people's role also. I do not want you all to walk away thinking that, this was your fault or you have been buying too much plastics and so on. You can also consider that as well if you've been, purchasing without any thoughts towards the waste footprint that will be generated. But at the same time, I want you to also put the pressure back onto the producers, the brands who designed it. Why are they coming up with such design? But at the same time, companies also require regulation and policy and laws from the government to then be able to innovate. So young people, I know that, this is quite far off from what you normally do day to day, but if you are able to then write to your minister, do let them know that this global treaty is required and Malaysia does need to take this outside of just national measure, because a lot of products are not made and designed here in Malaysia. They are made elsewhere under other brands, and sometimes you have no choice. You are then going to a supermarket and that's the only packaging that there is on the shelf because, it was designed somewhere by a brand, because that was the easiest method for them to package their product in. So if countries and governments do not regulate, it will be on you, the consumers, that will end up feeling the guilt of creating this much waste.
Thank you. So I think young people can maybe also start to look behind your products. If you see an email there, write to them, to tell them that, certain amount of plastics is not necessary, perhaps. Writing them and giving feedback to the companies who are, they may be, in F&B or other products, but they also have a hand in requesting the design of the plastics, right? And their own packaging. Yeah, and maybe that can help push and drive companies to start designing better packaging. Yeah, thanks a lot for that sharing. I actually have one follow-up question on that, and then I just move on to the other questions, which is that, what are your thoughts? A lot of community-based projects focus on recycling plastic bags, which are single-use, into souvenirs such as keychains and jewelries, and other methods. So, in your perspective, is that a good way of managing plastic waste? And if not, what is the alternative to such community, project designs, ideas for them? Anybody open to any? Yeah.
Can I share my last slide here that
Sure, yes.
that will help answer this?
Yes.
So Waste reduction should be how we should be looking at this. So like what Magesh has mentioned earlier on, plastic has additives in them, and about 4,200 of those chemicals used in those plastics are toxic. So when to make those new plastic products from the plastic bag, it's normally heated, right? It'll be melted to some other shape and so on. And during that heat application, the toxic fumes will be emitted. So unless those workers doing those new souvenir items and all that are wearing sufficient protective gear and so on, they are actually breathing toxic fumes. So look into waste reduction methods. And it all can start from communities. So there are already a lot of waste reduction enabling systems that are practiced here in the global south. It's not even innovation that comes from, you know, a developed country. These are things that we have been doing here, except perhaps maybe number one, the filtered water dispensers. So this one was something that we are already seeing in a lot of airports. When you go to airports, there's already a lot of places where you can fill in water, right, with your own water bottle. So if this is actually spread either throughout a community or in shopping malls, all also come equipped with the water dispensers, do you all need to buy that plastic bottle water? You no longer need to. You just need to bring your water bottle when you go out. So that is actually really reducing a lot of waste already. So these all can be started either at community level or even within a closed loop area like a shopping mall or something. Refill stores. This is a Malaysia or an Asian thing, biskut timbang. Right, everyone can then bring your own packaging there or your own container. I want to fill it with my favorite biscuit, and you already cut down all those packaging from the biscuits that you've been buying that are single packed and so on. Philippines have an example of where detergent and shampoos can be refilled by whatever amount that you want to buy. If you say that this is actually only something that's accessible for the middle income to higher income bracket. No, these are actually all in community village, as you can see in the photo here, is actually done by a community store. They just have, if you can only afford to buy a small bottle, you buy a small bottle, they give you 2 pumps and they charge you by 2 pumps, you know. So it's not something that is only, a lot of people say, oh, these are all only for the rich middle class urbans, you know. No, in Philippines, it's being done in small villages. And my best thing nowadays, you know, with Grab, Food Panda, and so on, you look at the amount of waste generated. Look at tiffin meals that have been around for 100 over years. I think in Mumbai, the Dabawalas history goes back over 100 over years already in terms of how they deliver meals in tiffins all throughout Mumbai with almost zero error. One always gets to them, and then the tiffins get collected back, it's washed, and then you know, reused hundreds of times. So there are solutions, and actually it all comes from a lot of global south countries. We only just need to put it in practice, and we will then be able to see waste reduction options.
Thank you. Mages, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Siping has said. So in terms of, you know, some of them do this as an intermediary measure. Yeah. So what do they do with the existing plastic waste? But so we need to consider about the toxicity in plastics itself if we come up with something. But we do realize that a lot of small and medium scale industries and enterprises, they rely on plastics. So this is why we are calling for just transition. So for young people, probably you can also, you know, be innovative, think of, you know, the designs of, or in terms of the alternative material that can be used. Yeah, so this is actually a business venture also, right, for the young. So, you know, how do we go about it properly with the right solutions? Because there are also false solutions that are being proposed. Let's turn this plastics into roads, plastics to fuel. So all these are actually dangerous because it is just transferring the chemicals from the plastics waste into something else, and it is releasing toxic emissions. So this is actually not the right solution. And what we are calling it as false solutions. Or this waste incineration, waste to fuel, plastic waste to roads. Yeah, it's all those are false solutions. First thing to do is cap production. Yeah, we cannot keep on producing. We don't turn off the tap. Yeah, that is at the source itself. Then you will still have a lot of waste to manage. So the plastics treaty, what we are saying is not a waste management treaty. Yeah, it's a plastic treaty which has to look into the whole life cycle.
Right.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you. Yeah. Yeah, and I think we can ask our grandparents how they had managed well before the use of single-use plastics that often. Okay. It's 11:30, but I do have just maybe one question that I can share from the participants, if that's okay, Siping and Mages, to answer. So one of the questions that was posed was, how far does Malaysia's plastic management plan consider plastic waste to anything X pathways, like plastic to fuel, plastic to chemicals? I think it's a good segue to what Mages had mentioned earlier. If not yet implemented, and what are the main challenges blocking these pathways?
So I think I'll start off first. So this is actually still at the downstream end of plastic. So when plastic finally have reached end of life, it needs to be disposed of. So first and foremost, we will always say that it's more important to look into reduction first. So like what we mentioned just now, all the waste reduction. If we don't reduce, then there's no way any waste management system that we have will be able to cope with the volume. Look at the volume that's predicted to be generated in 2025 this year, 15 million tons of solid waste that's going to be generated, out of which 20% is plastics. So if we don't reduce that volume will just only triple. Mages have showed you, if everything remain business as usual, the trajectory of volume of waste will be there, and our landfill will constantly be overwhelmed. And there's also currently talk from the Ministry of Local Housing and Development, is it KPKT? Yeah,
Housing and local government.
Housing and Local Government, that is looking into the area of waste management for the country, into expanding things like incineration and so on. So that's very worrying, because if you incinerate plastic, you're releasing toxic chemicals, right? So we already know that. And also, our waste mix is very wet, because we all have we like soupy stuff, So is that actually the best thing to be used for incineration technology? So we really need to look into sorting waste first, so that nobody in Malaysia currently even do sorting at source, right? Look at how Japan sort their waste, 40 over categories. Everything is properly cut, and and therefore there will be then a proper way to finally manage this waste in a better way. We should stop looking at waste as waste, but instead as potential resource material. If it's properly sorted, then there will be less need to look into pathways to manage it just as waste. Mages, maybe you can add on.
No, good that you mentioned Japan. So last week we had students from a Japanese university. So they were surprised to learn that their waste is being exported to Malaysia. Yeah. And why is it being exported? Because Malaysia says, Japan waste is clean. For a recycling process, it's much cleaner and easier to recycle. So, but that's the thing. What we are calling for is not to treat it as a waste management. In terms of waste management, we need to look into the production level. What we are proposing is zero waste. So you have to, resolve the problem at its root cause, at the root itself. So first is reject the use of plastics, and then look into redesign, reuse, and all the other systems has to come into the whole picture. So zero waste is a goal and also a plan of action that we should all be looking into. So to get more information, there are a lot of resources in the websites of Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives on how to go forward, what is wrong with plastics, and also the International Pollutants Elimination Network. So just Google or to all these resources. Yeah, you have to learn about what is going to impact and what is going to impact the future generation. Yeah, we cannot just go carry on business as usual. We need to do something, and it also starts with your generation and also the future generation. Yeah, thank you.
All right, with that, we are 5 minutes past our original end time. Apologize for that, a little bit of delay, but I think that we all get so much from both yourself and Siping, so I didn't want to stop there. But the session will have to end. And I want to thank you and Siping, Mages, for attending and also sharing your experiences and your thoughts. And actually, you can consider this lifelong work, right? Of trying to combat the plastic crisis. Yeah. So yes, this session will be recorded and we'll be putting it up on the website. So if participants, if you have any of your friends who would like to also listen in and learn more about the plastics treaties, the life cycle of plastic, and what they can do, please feel free to log in within the next few days. And thank you very much, Siping and Mages, again for your time.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having us.
listening. Right.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
All right.